Hello and welcome to the Ivy and the Arch podcast, a Major League Baseball podcast with an emphasis on the Chicago Cubs and the St. Louis Cardinals. My name is Aaron. I'm joined by Caleb, and this is episode 3. We're 3 deep into this podcast, and a quick note to anybody who's listening, watching, we want to thank you again for all your continued support as we get this thing off the ground. If you've been watching us on YouTube and you haven't subscribed yet, we would really greatly appreciate that. If at any point throughout this video you like what we're saying, go ahead and hit that like button if you don't mind. If you're listening to us on Spotify, if you want to hit that follow button just so you know whenever we post a new episode, and it greatly helps us out, try to broaden our audience here. All the love and support has been great, and we can't wait to keep doing this for you all as the season gets started. Caleb, how are you doing?
Aaron, I'm doing great, my man. Part of that is the first instance of competitive live baseball in several months.
It was great last night. I had turned it on. My wife was super happy for me because she knows how much I've missed baseball, and it was so good to see. I caught a brief part of the DR versus Venezuela game before I turned on the Team USA versus Great Britain game. I saw Luis Castillo. No, not Luis Castillo. Who was it? The Houston Astros pitcher with the weird delivery. Can't remember his name. Christian Javier, maybe? No, it's not that. Anyways, Luis Garcia. That's who it is. He had that weird baby rocking the baby wind-up delivery last year, which was actually illegal the whole time. I don't know how that delivery was ever allowed, but it was cool seeing him pitch last night with that new delivery. A lot more smooth due to the pitch clock, and he just got straight to work. But yeah, tuned into the World Baseball Classic, and man, watching that lineup just go to work. I mean, regardless of who they're playing, it's a fun watch. Just seeing all those big names in that lineup and watching Mike Trout play meaningful baseball for once in his career. It's an awesome thing to see.
Yeah, we got the starts out in 2017. That was one thing that, while Team USA did win, they relied on like crazy magical performances from Adam Jones and Buster Posey and guys who weren't necessarily doing it at that time, especially Adam Jones. So the fact that they have what John Smoltz was calling the dream team all night, like it's exciting to see. We have Mike Trout. We have, aside from maybe a guy like Bryce Harper, we do have the best players at every position in the game, which is really exciting.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I mean, I was texting you last night during the game, and it's cool to be able to root for a guy like Nolan Arenado in a game like this, when we're not facing him and when he's not on the Cardinals. But man, did he tear it up last night? And we'll get more into the World Baseball Classic, later on in this episode. But seeing all those superstars on this team, that's exactly the kind of thing that MLB needs. And the World Baseball Classic is the perfect way to get a lot of your big name stars in front of a global audience and to a lot of young fans who might be tuning into this event for the first time, because we didn't have it in 2020. Last time was in 2017. So yeah, World Baseball Classic, great for the game, great watch, and not just for Team USA. I mean, if you're a fan of a lot of these Dominican players, a lot of these Puerto Rican players, that's got to be cool, for their home country to be able to see all of their stars on one field. It's such a cool event. I love it.
Yeah, no, it's great. I would I wish the start times were a little bit earlier, but I get it. You're appealing to fans all over the world, so you have to find some middle ground.
I believe tonight's game, the United States is playing Mexico, and they don't start until 9 p.m. Eastern, so I might stay up a little bit to catch the first part of that game, but...
Hate to break your heart, it's 9 Central.
Is it 9 Central?
9 Central.
That's horrendous. So, yeah, those late start times feels like I'm watching, Cubs-Dodgers game when they're on the West Coast, those late night games. Although these would be more entertaining to watch, I think, than those. But anyways, I figure we'll start this episode kind of a recap, Cubs-Cardinals spring training of this week, any notable stuff that happened. Not a whole lot of new news out of the Cubs camp down in Mesa. There were a couple standout performances, couple notes I wanted to touch on a little bit. One of the guys who had a pretty nice game the other day on Tuesday, one of our backup catchers that we signed as a minor league free agent, Luis Torrens, I believe his name is. He had a 2-homer game on Tuesday, went 2 for 3. He's our depth piece in AAA, if there were to be an injury to Gomes or to Barnhart. He's only 26. He's not a great defensive catcher. He has a really bad walk rate. But he does have some pop. He had a 15-homer season with the Mariners in 2021. So it's nice to see him kind of have that power stroke still if we were to need it, especially with, the question marks surrounding the power in our lineup. I don't think Gomes and Barnhart are going to hit a combined 10 home runs this year. if I'm being honest. So if God forbid an injury were to happen to one of them, it's nice to know that one of our depth pieces has a little bit of pop in his bat. So that was good to see. Wanted to highlight Trey Mancini, first baseman, DH, outfielder, Cubs brought in. He's had a really nice spring so far. He's slashing 579, 600 on base percentage, and then an 895 slug. On Wednesday, he went 2 for 3 with his second spring training home run. So it's nice to see him kind of have a good spring training. You want to see that offensive performance you know that you can get from Trey Mancini this season. He kind of had a down second half of the year after being moved over to Houston. He wasn't really the bat that he normally is. He still played great defense at first base. So I'm hoping that we see that offensive unit that Trey Mancini has been in the past. I think that'd be a nice, surprise to this lineup. Besides him, the only other hitter I really had a note on, Ian Happ. He hit a 2-run homer today. He's had a really, really nice spring training, looks comfortable at the plate. And I always forget he's a switch hitter, which is a really nice, asset to the team to have somebody who has power like Ian Happ from both sides of the plate, who has that patience from both sides of the plate, who can draw a walk. It's nice to see him kind of pick up where he left off last year with that, career year that he had. And he should have more of a chip on his shoulder this year. It's his walk year. He's coming off a Gold Glove win, coming off of a 20-homer season, I believe, coming off of just a career year that he had. I'd love to see him take a step forward if that's even possible. But if we can get the same performance out of Ian Happ in left field that we did last year, with all the other pieces that are more proven, I should say, around him this year than there were last year, his bat's going to be a really, really nice complement to that Cubs lineup. And those are about it for the offensive standpoints I had. Defensively, Pete Crow Armstrong, if any of you Cubs fans are on Twitter, you should have seen on Tuesday just the outstanding catch that he made in center field. He was playing pretty much true center, right down the middle alignment. He had quite a long run, ended up on the warning track, making a nice grab out. It was a phenomenal play, and that's what we're accustomed to seeing from the minors, from Pete Crow Armstrong in the minors. He's got an 80 tool glove according to most prospect ratings, which prospects are rated on a scale of 20 to 80, I believe, for their tools, their hit tool, their defense, their running. And I don't think there is any other 80 tool outfielder in the minors currently. And he's been showing that all spring. He hasn't really hit super well, but he is facing harder pitching than he was at Double A last year, or High A, and then a little taste of Double A. But the thing that stood out to me the most wasn't necessarily the catch. It was a great catch, and I've seen a couple of those from him before. But it was the comments he made. There was an interview that Marquee Sports Network posted after the game. They interviewed him at his locker, and I've never heard a prospect talk the way that he does about how he prepares to get a ball in the outfield. He was talking about how he follows the batter's swing to try to get a head start on where the ball might be going. That he can read the batter's swing, he knows what pitch the pitcher is throwing, he can read it as it's coming off of the bat. And just the way that he was talking about all of the things that go through his mind before, the ball is even in play, it's phenomenal. That's what you want to see from your young guys. You want to see these guys who are really tapping into what they know they can do best, working on it and showing it in game. And that's what Pete Crow Armstrong is doing, and I cannot wait to see him in center field. Hopefully late this year if he has a good minor league season. I'd love to see him late season call-up. But he's the future at Wrigley in center field. We haven't had a true defensive first prospect since probably, if you want to consider Almora, I believe he had a 60 or 70 grade defense tool. It's so nice to see not only the defensive prowess that he has, but the fact that he can also hold his own with the bat, which Almora did a little bit in the minors, but he wasn't really able to do when he came up to the major leagues. But I think that's a little bit of a different story there with Pete Crow Armstrong. So he's having just a really good spring. Love what we're seeing from him. And like I said, that's about it. That's all I got on the good side of things. There's a couple... Oh, sorry. Last good side of thing. Hayden Wesneski had another start, I believe, yesterday. 4 perfect innings, 4 strikeouts, bringing his spring training total to 8 2/3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, and 11 strikeouts. This dude is legit. if there was any question about who the fifth starter is going into the year, it's done. And it's not just done because of what Hayden Wesneski has been doing on the mound. It's also done because of what Adrian Sampson has been doing on the mound in a bad way. But I mean, I saw tweets about, people worried about his load management. We see this all the time with pitching prospects coming up. A lot of the time, the team will want to manage their inning load to make sure that they're not getting hurt. But I did see a tweet. I believe it was from Brendan Cubs on Twitter. If it wasn't from him, it was somebody else in that circle over there, about how Hayden Wesneski actually led the organizational innings total last year, between AAA with the Yankees, AAA with the Cubs, and then the Major League. He pitched, I think, 146 innings or something like that, which was more than any other of the Cubs starting pitchers in the entire organization. So I think that's a really good sign, seeing that he can handle an innings workload. And if you get only 150 innings out of Hayden Wesneski this year, I would be fine with that if he's putting up these kind of numbers. I would not be surprised to see him move up from maybe the 5 to the 4 or even the 3 spot in the rotation by the year's end if he's performing this way. The confidence that oozes out of him is incredible. His slider is disgusting. He's fooling hitters left and right with his pitches. And something I thought about today too, I think pitchers are going to be at more of an advantage this year having to play other teams who don't normally see them. When you have all this interleague division play, like the Central, for example, and you're playing the other 4 teams in the Central 19 times in a season, you're probably going to face one starting pitcher 3 or 4 times throughout the year, give or take. So you know what's coming. You've seen them, you've scouted them. All that stuff plays into the other team's preparation against them. But the fact that teams are traveling more and more and playing other teams more often than they might not be, who haven't seen Wesneski and don't necessarily know firsthand what he can do, I think that's going to play a role this year, and I don't think that's being talked about enough. So props to Hayden. I mean, keep balling out. You're going to have a great year. Please stay healthy with all the injuries that we've seen around the league this year. The last thing we need is for you to go down. But I could not be more hype for Wesneski and what he's going to do for the rotation this year. On the flip side of that coin, the guy who was supposed to beat out Wesneski for the fifth starter role, Adrian Sampson, has been shelled in almost every single spring training start that he's had. Tuesday, 2 2/3 innings, 4 hits, 6 earned runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, 3 homers allowed. He pitched again today against, I believe, the Dodgers. 4 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs, 2 strikeouts, and a couple more homers. His spring line is currently sitting at 8 1/3 innings, 13 earned runs, 8 home runs, 4 walks, and 5 strikeouts. So he has been not immune to the home run ball by any means this year. He's seemingly really struggled with that, and I think that probably solidifies his spot as more of a swingman in the bullpen, which isn't a bad thing. We know he can start. We know he was effective last year, even if the advanced metrics weren't favorable of him. He can give you 4 or 5 innings if you need it, and that's good insurance in case something were to happen. But again, I don't know if we're going to use him in that way this year. With Killian performing as well as spring training, if he's off to a hot start at AAA, I would prefer Killian up over Sampson. Sampson's got some options left, so if you need to swap him on the 26 man in the minor leagues, you can do that easily and just bring him back and forth. I wouldn't be mad and probably would prefer to keep Sampson somewhat stretched out. So if we start him in AAA for the year and one of the guys who's been fighting for a bullpen role maybe gets their shot at least to start the season, might not be a bad thing either. Depth is always good, but the showing this spring training for Adrian Sampson has been less than superb, which isn't exactly what you want to see. A couple other notes on the downside. Cody Bellinger kind of starting to somewhat find his groove. He has 1 home run, I believe, this spring. He's not making a whole lot of good contact. But again, I want to preface this. It's spring training. It's week 2. This isn't going to be the tale for the whole season, especially for a guy like Bellinger. He's finding his groove on a new team, working through swing changes, working to make sure his body is fully healthy and ready to go. I'm not super worried about it. It's just something I'm more or less keeping an eye on at this point. And Dansby Swanson, he was the other one. I don't believe he had another hit today. They were playing the Brewers today, not the Dodgers. But I believe he only has 1 hit so far this spring. I'm checking that now. My notes say he's 1 for 11, and that would be correct. I think he's maybe 1 for 12 now at this point. He's hitting he's hitting 059 with a 273 on base percentage, no homers yet. Again, preface, spring training. I'm not really worried about it, but he's also a guy coming from an organization he'd been with his whole career, same coaching structure, same support around him. Whole new world in Chicago, new staff, new structure, new teammates. I'm sure he's just working through his swing, figuring things out. And as long as the glove plays for me, that's all I really care about, him and Nico up the middle. Um, and that's all I really have in terms of player performances. A couple odd end notes here. I think the defense is looking phenomenal. Every position seems to be holding their own pretty well defensively. I do think, Morel seems to be heating up a little more, and he hit a home run, I believe, yesterday. I still think he's going to start the year in AAA, which I think is best for his development. Same with Nelson Velasquez, who is, I believe, currently playing in the World Baseball Classic. So I'll be rooting for him and his team out there. I think they're going to start the year in AAA. I don't really think this last week has changed my opinion on that, and I don't think it's really changed David Ross and his staff's opinion on that either. The last thing I want to really touch on here is the annual round of spring training cuts that happen. So, for those of you who don't know, spring training rosters are usually in the 60 to 70 player range that are eligible for games. The Cubs announced on Friday that they trimmed 10 players off of their roster. Alexander Canario and Brendan Davis were both trimmed off of the spring training roster and technically optioned to AAA. Not saying that's where they're going to start the year. They probably will. Canario will be on the disabled list to start the year, and Davis will probably start the year at AAA Iowa. Pitchers Ben Brown, Ryan Jansen, catcher Miguel Amaya were optioned to AA Tennessee, so those guys saw a little bit of game action. It's good to get them in Major League camp facing Major League pitching, especially a guy like Amaya, who we're looking to take a big step forward this year. And then 4 non-roster invitees, which technically means guys who are not on a team's 40-man roster but still receive an invite to the big league camp from the team. Danis Correa, Jordan Holloway, Ben Leeper, and Picro Armstrong were all assigned to the minor league camp portion of spring training. So that's really all the Cubs news I have. Really nice week. Cubs are winning in spring training, which is nice to see. Defense is playing well. We're looking next week to hopefully see some of these guys take an offensive step forward. Hopefully have no injuries. And with that, Caleb, I will turn it over to you and the Redbirds.
Yeah. So with all the Cardinals players, mostly the starters that are participating in the World Baseball Classic for their selected countries, we've seen a lot of playing time from guys who might not necessarily have gotten it this spring, which has been nice. One of the guys who's really been showing out this spring has been Brendan Donovan. So I was a big fan of Brendan Donovan last year. He did win that Gold Glove for the utility, the very first utility award that Rawlings gave out for that. Brendan Donovan was remarkable at getting on base last year and finding ways to get on base, whether that came from a double, a single, a walk, whatever it may have been. He really showed up as a rookie, and that was really nice to have slotted in your lineup, especially at a position of doubt like the Cardinals had with second base. They went into the year having Edman slotted in at second, and that was with the goal of having Paul DeYoung kind of take that spot back at shortstop. Didn't happen that way. Now we're going into this spring basically knowing that Edman is your starting shortstop, and Donovan is kind of taking that second base spot with the addition of being able to play kind of all over the diamond as well, which is nice. So Donovan has added a lot of power this spring, which is always good to see. He has officially caught his home run total from last year, which was at 5. He got that, I think, a couple days ago in their game. So whatever vamps he made to his swing, I noticed he was in more of an upright position than he was all of last year. I'm okay with that. It worries me when a guy who has something going, well for them tinkers with their swing too much, but I think as far as him not really slowing down in any other part of the game, it's still nice to see that he's drawing walks and getting singles and doubles, and it's not all power or strikeout, because you have guys already that do that. You don't need another one. So good on Donovan for finding a way to add power to his arsenal without sacrificing too much of something else. We'll stay in the range of second base here. Nolan Gorman has been making a huge case to play in the everyday lineup. He has hit remarkably well this spring compared to last season. I think any Cardinals fan would tell you when he came up, we were, I don't want to use the word disappointed because he's still swatted, didn't even look, his home run total from last year.
Wasn't it in the 20s?
It was, I know it was 14.
Okay.
Okay, so for a guy who came up sometime in May, and he did spend some time in the minors before coming back up. You know, I'll take 14 home runs out of that spot. Second base, for a lot of teams, excluding maybe the Astros, I'm trying to think who else, it's a weaker spot in the lineup. Second base and catcher, it's
Yeah.
guys are slotted in. So for Gorman to come in this spring and really take control and try to make a case to stay on that roster, I think that's important. It's so Gorman has time. He's not, racing to make the team. He has options if he needs to start the year in AAA. But that is, it's nice to see as far as him. Is dealing with some right shoulder fatigue and strain. So he was pulled from the game the other day, replaced in left field. I think Alec Burleson took his spot. But he says he's fine. He came out and talked to the media, and he said he's doing okay. And, I think the team kind of had more of a precautionary outlook on that. So that makes sense to me. You don't want to rush anything with the kid, especially if you envision him breaking camp and starting up with the team. You don't want to have any sort of pushing it as far as making that injury any worse.
Yeah.
Andrew Kisner, the Cardinals came out and basically said that there will be competition for that backup catcher spot. So, a lot of fans, I think they considered Kisner kind of the concrete, solidified backup catcher to Wilson Contreras. That's not going to be the case. I think he's going to have to earn it. So with that backup catcher spot, Kisner does have competition. One guy they've gave a lot of playing time to this spring has been Trace Barrera. So we'll see if he is able to kind of take over that spot. And I don't think they're looking for a lot of offense out of that position. I think, if a guy can come in, get on base a couple times a game, they'd be perfectly happy with that. But they want a good, solidified defensive backup catcher. And that's kind of, I think, their final determination in who's going to get that spot. There's a bit of a log jam in the outfield. With we're looking at 5 guys who I think are competing for playing time here: Juan Yepez, Lars Nootbaar, Jordan Walker, Tyler O'Neill, and Dylan Carlson. All, I think, have a say in trying to claim that last outfield or that's a given. You can pencil him in for probably right field, depending on who else makes it. But Jordan Walker's making a case to make the team. If he doesn't, you can remove his name. But you still have a bit of a problem there with Juan Yepez, Tyler O'Neill, and Dylan Carlson. All have hit pretty well this spring. It took Dylan Carlson a good week to kind of catch up, but he's there. They all have a couple of home runs this spring. So the power is there. They're finding it. It's just a matter of staying healthy and staying on the field. I know for a speed, you're looking at Tyler O'Neill and Dylan Carlson in a different light, but Juan Yepez just gives you really professional at-bats. So that's something to consider. You can obviously carry all of them on the roster. It's just all about who's going to get the most consistent playing time.
Now, I don't mean to interrupt you here, but Dylan Carlson is a player that I've kind of been watching on your end over the last couple of years. I pulled up his page here, 2021. He played in 149 games, had an 18-homer season last year, 128 games, and only had 8 homers. But he did cut down on his strikeouts immensely from what I'm seeing here. Was he known in the minor leagues as a big power guy, or was he more of like that kind of contact first bat guy What was his profile like?
I think it was power in the minors. So when he came up, I know you mentioned that 18 homer season. That was, exciting to think about. But when you think about last year, only that 8 homer season, it's on the downside. He struggled a little bit with some injuries, and I think the biggest thing that a lot of fans will tell you is, I'm not so certain that he's the switch hitter that he makes himself out to be. And
Yeah.
that's not a knock against Dylan Carlson. I don't. It's nothing. The fact that players can even still attempt to be switch hitters is amazing to me. But his splits are so bad when he's batting righty.
When he's batting
Lefty
lefty.
is
Lefty.
lefty. Okay.
At least last year, they were really bad when he was.
No, and well, last year is when the problems started. So that's, I think, kind of what people are looking at. Some batting right-handed just to see if that will kind of bring his offensive production up.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to have that switch hitter in the lineup, but you already have Lars Nootbaar batting lefty, so you're taken care of there. I think it's important to have one of your 3 outfielders to be able to bat lefty just for some lineup flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I've never been someone who's cared too much about righty lefty splits and trying to alternate righty lefty in your lineup. I think the guys who hit and who have that clutch third, why Arenado hits fourth, and they haven't changed that since they've been on the team. So you obviously want to get a guy who gets on base in front of them. I think that's why Tommy Edman has always been the consensus. But leading right into my next point, I almost think that Lars Nootbaar has made his case for why he should be the leadoff hitter of this team. Nootbaar has done everything that's been asked of him from this organization, and I think that's a really important factor into why he's penciled in as my most concrete starting outfielder with a position is because he there's not enough cons to outweigh what he brings to the table.
Yeah.
On the rotational side of things, we have not seen Jordan Montgomery since that last start where he struggled. We have seen Steven Matz, and he looked pretty darn good today. The guys who are participating in the World Baseball Classic, I know we had some notes about Wainwright that we'll get into later. Michaelis pitched against the Giants in that exhibition on Wednesday night. And you know what? Outside of his first inning, I thought he settled down. And I'll say something similar about Wainwright. And maybe it's because I watch these guys pitch all the time, but I'm used to shaky first innings. That's what they give us all the time.
Right.
So when they're able to settle down, and if they're only giving up a run or two, and they can give you 5 or 6 innings, that's still a winnable ball game.
Yeah.
Your offense has to be able to compete with that. So if that's what we're going to get out of most of the rotation, I'm not expecting a 2019 Jack Flaherty season. But if we can get some guys who will give you 2 or 3 runs over 5 or 6 innings, you can play with that with this offense. So last note here, it was nice to see Pujols back in camp. He was just visiting. I don't think he can legally say that he was there.
Nope.
He would void his personal services contract with the Angels. Good on him for sticking that out. I was a little confused. I didn't think that, honestly, because of the way that his tenure ended with that team, I didn't think he was going to serve it, especially since the league doesn't even allow those contracts to be given out anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a man of his word, and I can respect that. He's with the team, he's working with young hitters, and that's the kind of guy Pujols is. He's not somebody who is going to stand you up on a deal like that.
No.
So when it comes time for the Hall of Fame, I don't think he's going to allow for an Angels logo to be put on his cap.
No.
And aside from his feelings, I don't even think the Hall would allow for that.
No, and I honestly think the Angels would do well by him to know that he wants that. I don't think they would stand in his way there. If they do, yikes. But I don't think they would stand in his way if he wanted a Cardinals hat on, as he should.
Well, he's such a respectable guy. I could almost see a blank cap, and that's going to upset a lot of Cardinals fans. But you got to understand, his offensive production was not there with the Angels, but he was there 10 years.
Yeah.
It's a long time to be with a team.
It's a really long time.
So I know a lot of that is your financial obligation to him. If he's on minimum deal, no, I don't think he's there that long. But that's the team that he signed with. That's the decision he made, and if he goes in with a blank cap, it wouldn't really shock me all that much.
No, I think in all honesty, he's going to go in with that Los Angeles Dodgers cap. I mean, his time there was pretty memorable after being cut. So that would be a real
Honest to God, I forgot about the Dodgers.
it's a forgettable experience, honestly. I mean, he was released from the Angels, signed with the Dodgers, and it's like I forget too. You were just talking about him, and I'm like, oh crap. I mean, he had a stop in there between Anaheim and St. Louis again, and he put on that Dodger blue for a little bit, and was a nice lefty bench bat or lefty killer off of the bench.
Well, as a baseball card guy,
Yeah.
buy 22 cards early in the year, you get a lot of 21 players and who they played for. So the amount of pools in Dodgers Blue 55 that I pulled was ridiculous.
Keep them.
Way too many Dodgers Pujols cards.
They will be the forgotten era of Albert Pujols. That time with the Dodgers.
All right, and then the Cardinals made some trims too. I'll just go over the bigger names that they reassigned. Right-hander Jake Walsh and infielder Jose Fermin. They were both assigned to Memphis, so they'll start the year there in AAA. They did reassign right-handers, recent draft picks, so they're bigger names. Gordon Gracefo and Michael McGreevy were both reassigned to the minor camp, which I think saw that it starts March 16th.
Yes.
The minor league spring training, so those guys will still get some playing time out there. One guy that I'm really interested in seeing, who they drafted last summer, was Connor Jerpy. So he had some comps to Chris Sale, mostly in his size, but also in kind of the way he threw his fastball. So he did not pitch at all last year because of how much he threw in college. So they did not have him pitch any part of the remainder of the season last year in the minors. So I'm excited to see kind of what he is able to bring. If there's one thing that this organization has been able to do really well, it's draft young pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that when I look at the Marlins ace. Because this team drafted Sandy Alcantara.
And the Diamondbacks ace, too, Zach Gallen.
And the Diamondbacks ace. Both guys part of the Marcell Ozuna trade. Fun fact. They traded both of those guys for Marcell Ozuna. So I'll always look at that and know that that's Mo's worst mistake he ever made. But it happens. It happens all the time. Cubs had Josh Donaldson at one point.
We had DJ LeMahieu, too.
Yeah, DJ LeMahieu. Did not win an MVP, but still a serviceable, solid ball player. It happens to every team, and if you're gonna pretend like it doesn't, then you don't pay attention.
That Ozuna trade too had a little more ripple effect than I think most people realize. So obviously the Cardinals got Ozuna there in the deal, and the Marlins got as part of the package they got Sandy Alcantara and Zach Gallen. Zach Gallen was in turn flipped to the Diamondbacks for Jesraldo Chisholm Jr. Jazz Chisholm. So
yep.
That was putting a lot of stars in place with that trade.
Right. He's the face of Miami baseball right now.
He is.
And he's on the cover of this year's MLB The Show.
Their new center fielder, too. Not playing second or short anymore. Moved out there.
True. Self-proclaimed Gold Glove winner. He better do it before PCA makes the league, though.
Yeah, that center field Gold Glove in the National League. Everybody else
only going to have 1 year.
Everybody else better hurry up and ball out there because it's lost hope for them once he's up.
I love it. All right, man. What's up next?
I'm thinking we talk about just some general MLB notes. I want to start with the injuries because, once again, there was a rash of them. One of the saddest ones that I saw was Andrew Painter, who is the Phillies' top prospect and the number 6 overall prospect in all of Major League Baseball. He's only 19, which, I'm 24, and it's weird seeing these guys that are uber talented, way younger than I am, that are breaking out into the major leagues. He was supposed to crack the Phillies rotation this year. He was supposed to be a big part of that, and he has a torn UCL. He's planning to sit out a month before resuming light baseball activities to determine how long his recovery process will end up taking. Tommy John surgery is definitely on the table for him. In my opinion, if he's got a UCL problem, he's only 19. He's literally was going to crack the major league rotation this year. I don't see the benefit in trying to play through it and further injuring it worse. I would, if I were the Phillies, and I'm not a doctor, I don't make these kind of decisions, obviously, but if I'm the Phillies organization, I look real hard at getting that done now, and especially while spring training's still going on, get the surgery out of the way so his time frame is to come back, beginning to middle of next year with all the rehab that's going on. I don't know. It's tough seeing these young guys, um, potential Tommy John candidates or get Tommy John. I feel like it's inevitable with the way that young guys are throwing now, throwing harder, more breaking pitches, snapping their elbow a lot more. It's definitely a growing trend, and there's nothing you can really do about it. But I'm always of the opinion that if you are young enough and early enough in your career where you possibly need the surgery, get it done. Because if you get it done correctly and you give yourself time in a non competitive environment to rehab, I feel like the chances are you're going to come back and perform, just as good or somewhere near the level that you used to. I mean, look at a guy like Jameson Taillon. I think he's had 2 Tommy John surgeries, and he just signed a $70 million contract with the Cubs. So, I mean, just best wishes to him. It's always tough to see young guys going through injuries like that, especially when they had a huge year planned for them. Another Yankees. Yankees were kind of the forefront of the injury talk this week too,
Yankees are dropping like flies.
and that was the trend
It's
that
scary.
happened last year. I mean, they're Anthony Rizzo with his back problems last year. Yeah, you got a rash of injuries, but two of them big names: Harrison Bader, old friend of the St. Louis Cardinals, oblique. Go figure. That seems to be the magical word this spring training is the oblique injury. He has a left oblique injury. He described it as a smack in the face. There's no real timetable on him to resume baseball activities yet. It's just kind of one of those waited out until you get full range of motion, and then you can pick back up light baseball until you can get on a rehab assignment. But he will, and I think he's definitely starting the year on the injured list, which is a pretty big blow to the Yankees. They needed his defense out there in center field, where I believe he was going to be playing for them. And then Carlos Rodon, the biggest pitching free agent signing this offseason in terms of dollars. I believe, yeah, in terms of dollars. Left forearm strain. He is, quote, absolutely not throwing for 2 weeks, which that's not really a term I've heard before, but absolutely no throwing for 2 weeks. He is guaranteed starting the season on the injured list. Hopefully, with him especially, that was a big concern prior to him joining the San Francisco Giants when he was non-tendered by the Chicago White Sox, his injury history. He has had a pretty extensive injury history. There were concerns of that. I think he silenced most of those concerns last year in San Francisco in the way that he dominated with the Giants, and so the Yankees were really comfortable, and so were many other teams really comfortable in giving him a hefty, sizable contract for the true ace that he is when he's healthy. So to see him go down this early with a strain, not exactly what you want to see. The fact that it is a strain makes me a little less nervous than if it was another kind of injury, not like a tear or anything. So let's hope that he has the minimum stay on the IL to start the year and he's back in that Yankees rotation real quick. Because, like you said, Yankees are injury prone. It's a weird thing with them, and they need all the help they can get in that division.
This entire injury riddled month, it seems like, with the Yankees, it all is kind of related to their starting pitching because they bring in Carlos Rodon, who ends up getting hurt. They knowingly traded for Frankie Montas last fall at last summer at the deadline, knowing that he was hurting and that he was pushing through to finish the season, but he was going to be hurting and probably need some sort of rest or operation or whatever it may have been. And then they traded for Harrison Bader and they let lefty Jordan Montgomery go in that deal. So
Yeah.
their pitching took a big hit, and they're not even really able to kind of, have any sort of relief on the other side of things because Bader's not playing. The guy they brought in through free agency isn't going to pitch for, a month at this point at the very minimum. So I feel for the Yankees. That's tough. That's really tough, but that's why it's interesting because I really wanted Frankie Montas last year. I thought he would have really benefited being with the Cardinals for the rest of that year. They ended up getting Quintana and Montgomery, and those guys lit it up for them. They did a really good job. So looking back on it, we would be in a terrible position given our current rotation if we did trade for Frankie Montas.
Yeah. And to touch on the Yankees trade deadline last year, I'm trying to remember the guys that they gave up Jordan Montgomery, who absolutely excelled for the Cardinals after being acquired, for Harrison Bader, who barely played for the Yankees last year, but they gave up that deal knowing that they wanted extra outfield depth for 2023 and feeling confident enough in their pitching depth to make that move. But in my opinion, that was a poor trade at this point for the Yankees, the way that Montgomery played towards the end of the last year for the Cardinals, the fact that Bader didn't play a lot and is now hurt, not really of service to the Yankees right now. Another trade, obviously, the Hayden Wesneski for Scott Efros swap. Wesneski is looking like a future middle of the rotation at a minimum guy in this league for the Chicago Cubs. And Scott Efros is recovering from Tommy John surgery and probably won't throw a single inning of Major League Baseball this year. So another bad injured pitcher swap. The Frankie Montas deal with Oakland, they gave up a haul for him, including who is now the number 76 overall prospect in all of baseball, Ken Waldichuk, who I actually wanted in a trade with the Yankees if the Cubs were to ever move one of like Wilson Contreras or Ian Happ over there. He was a guy that I wanted, but they moved him in a package over for Montas. And who was the closer? They acquired the Athletics closer last year.
Oh shoot, what's his name?
I'm trying to remember his name. I can't remember.
Lou
Trevino?
Lou Trevino.
Yeah, because they have a Jose Trevino who is a catcher, and then they have a Lou Trevino who is in their bullpen. Both those guys really struggled. Montas was not great. Trevino struggled hard in their bullpen. So just poor trades last offseason. And then even to begin the season, the whole Josh Donaldson deal was really weird. The Isaiah Kiner-Falefa addition didn't really seem to work out well.
They were being cheap, man.
Yeah.
They there were shortstops out there that they could have gotten, and this is why I gave them props in our first episode for re-signing Judge, because the typical last decade Yankees move would have been to let him go and bring in Mike Tauchman, like somebody. You know what I'm saying?
Thanks for not doing that, Yankees, because now we have our fifth outfielder to start the year.
The Yankees have this big talk about things that happened 20 years ago, and I'm really glad for that fan base's sanity that they did the right thing and gave Judge that money, because they should have had Carlos Correa, not this past offseason, but the one before. And they should have signed Trey Turner and whoever else. They should have gotten these guys.
They should have. They're the big bad Yankees. And it's looking more beneficial for them having gone back and brought Rizzo back, having brought Judge back. Losing Benintendi is going to be kind of questionable because then you're rolling with Aaron Hicks every day in your outfield at this point, especially with Bader out. But enough of the Yankees. They're just an injury-prone franchise out there in the East and might come back to bite them because the Blue Jays are looking kind of nasty this year. One more New York injury to mention, Kodai Senga, who I was praying that the Cubs would have landed this offseason. I loved his stuff. I loved all the scouting reports on him. He is out with a right index finger discomfort injury. There was not really a time frame on when he would be back, but I'd like to note that that is the second New York Mets starting pitcher who is injured at the moment, him and Jose Quintana both. To me, that's concerning because two of your pitchers being injured, and neither of them are the pushing 40 guys in Verlander and Scherzer. That doesn't really give me a vote of confidence for the depth of this rotation because you had to replace Quintana with David Peterson because Quintana does not look like he's going to be starting the season anytime soon. And then if you lose Senga, your options are Tyler McGill, who was decent last year, or Joey Lasucci, who is not really a big name. But then you got to look at that point too. If both of those guys are still out, and a Justin Verlander or a Max Scherzer pulls a hammy, or something along those lines, gets hurt, that depth is looking really scary at that point, and not in a good way.
Yeah, we might see the movement early on at the trades market for a starter.
Yeah.
They do have some high-end prospects, that catcher Alvarez and Brett Beatty. So
yeah.
I'm sure they don't want to move either, but if you want an elite starter, I mean, just look at last year's deadline. That's going to be the price.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Brian Cashman was, quoted earlier saying that trades tend to pick up towards the second half of spring training, which we're rolling into now. One of the big noticeable trades that I remember in recent memory that happened actually right at the end of spring training was when Craig Kimbrell was traded from, I believe, the Red Sox to the Padres towards the very end of spring training in a pretty big trade. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think the Mets should go out and grab another starter. I don't really know who they have their eye on at this point. I don't really see a whole lot of teams with depth to spare, and nobody's really.
Well, one thing that is interesting to me is how, in your opinion, do you think we'll see any signings from teams of guys that are competing in the World Baseball Classic who are not currently rostered on a major league team?
I think we'll see some some minor league deals. I do.
I'm looking at Wolny last night. the guy who started the game for Great Britain. I
Oh,
mean, he
Vance
was
Worley.
Worley.
I don't know if you remember him. He's actually a major league veteran, like long time major league pitcher.
Really?
He hadn't pitched in a. He was on the Phillies for a long time. Let me pull him up here real
Okay.
quick. But he hasn't played professional baseball, I don't believe, since 2017.
I mean, he was kind of mowing guys down, including Mike Trout, and he had a pretty bad zone last night.
Horrible
He
zone.
was
That
he was
umpire.
painting the bottom quarters of the zone, and they were not being called.
I felt bad for him watching it. I obviously was rooting against him for Team USA, but I felt bad for him. He
Yeah,
was getting squeezed at
yeah.
everything.
Well, you can root for Team USA, but still recognize that it was a terrible zone.
Right. Vance Worley retired in 2017. Actually, he retired in 2021. He bounced around in minor league ball. He last played for the Marlins in 2017, had a 6.91 ERA through 72 innings. He played the Mets minor league AAA team in 2018 for 4 starts. Played again for the Mets in AAA in 2021. 15 starts, had a 5.23 ERA, and I think that's when he decided to hang it up. But he was pretty, he was a solid pitcher for the Phillies early on in his career. Played 3 years there, 2010 to 2012. Finished third in Rookie of the Year voting in 2011. He went 11-3 with a 3.01 that year. Kind of fell off a cliff after that point. Was never really effective. Bounced around to the Twins, the Pirates, 1 year in Baltimore, and then finished out his major league tenure in Miami. But yeah, he looked good last night. I mean, he's only 35. So I don't.
Yeah.
We may see him if he wants to continue pitching. I think he showed enough against a team like Team USA. If he, wants to come back, I think a team would give him a minor league deal as a depth piece, if anything. Um,
I'd take a flyer on him. Why not?
yeah, I mean he seemed to still have his groove there and everything. And you give him a trained umpire with a good zone, you might get a little more luck out of him. Other than that, the only two other things I really wanted to touch on before we go to the World Baseball Classic are two extensions that were just signed. Keibert Ruiz, a catcher for the Washington Nationals, who came over in the big blockbuster Max Scherzer Trey Turner trade a couple of years ago. He signed an 8-year, $50 million extension with the Nationals. He is about to turn 25 this year. He had a really solid year last year, 7 home runs. He has great plate discipline, 50 strikeouts to 30 walks in 433 plate appearances. So for a catcher, that's pretty good. You're not going to get a lot of pop out of him, but I feel like for the Nationals to sign somebody that long, is good as they go through this transition phase for them. I think he is going to be a good player. I think if you get a breakout year out of him, you get a breakout year out of C.J. Abrams at short, who they got in the Juan Soto trade. I think you're looking promising if you're a Washington Nationals fan. And I'm excited to see them when I go out to D.C. in May for a work trip. I will be attending a Padres Nationals game, so
That's awesome.
I will be excited to see that. The other big extension that was signed, and this one, the dollar amount honestly blew my mind. Corbin Carroll, who is the number 2 prospect in all of baseball with the Arizona Diamondbacks, yesterday agreed to an 8-year, $111 million contract extension. I mean, he is a star in the making. One of the fastest guys. I've seen plenty of clips of him in spring training just rounding the bases like the Flash. He came up for a cup of coffee with the Diamondbacks last year, played in 32 games, hit 260, 330 on base. He had 4 homers and 14 RBI in 115 plate appearances. He had 9 doubles and 2 triples in that short time, too. So he's got pop, he's got speed, great outfielder. Diamondbacks are going to be sitting real pretty in a couple years. You get Carroll up, you get Andrew Jones when he makes his way up through the minors. They've got a really nice farm system that they're brewing over there. Need to get a little bit of pitching to support it. But Corbin Carroll, good for the game too. Good for the game seeing these young guys and teams invest in them early, giving them a peace of mind knowing they don't have to perform to get a contract. They've already got it. They can just go up and do what they've been doing best their whole careers. So Corbin Carroll and I had a name to keep out an eye on this year. Look for him to torment both the Cubs and the Cardinals whenever they end up playing the Diamondbacks. Anything else you wanted to touch on Major League Baseball wise before we glance over the World Baseball Classic?
No, I think you pretty much covered it there, man.
Cool. All right. Well, just a brief overview of the World Baseball Classic. I haven't been following it super heavy outside of Team USA that started last night. I've got the standings page pulled up here. Basically, the way that the World Baseball Classic works is there are 4 pools, Pool A, B, C, and D. Each pool is made up of 5 teams. I believe each team plays each other once, so a total of 4 games. And for example, in Pool B, which has the powerhouse of Japan, they finished their pool play. They are done, as far as I know. Japan finished 4-0. Australia is currently behind them at 2-1. The Czech Republic is 1-2. Yada yada yada. Team USA played last night against Great Britain, with Great Britain having some of the worst uniforms I've ever seen donned in a professional sporting environment. It's like you slapped, what did you say, Helvetica 11-point font on a jersey and just typed it in. It was embarrassing to see that a team making it to this big stage had such a poor example of a jersey to throw out for their country. They lost to Team USA last night 6-2, and then got absolutely pummeled today by the Team Canada. I'm pulling up the score here, but I believe they got run ruled 18-8 against Team Canada today, and made plenty of baseball errors in terms of not running out balls and kind of showboating a little bit. So safe to say that their World Baseball Classic is quickly coming to an end. I'm trying to find the score here. Yeah, it was
had a 5-hour game today.
Yes, it was a very long game. It was 18-8 against Canada. Canada had 17 hits. I'm trying to see. Tyler O'Neill, your boy, 4 for 4, with 4 RBI and 4 runs scored and 2 walks. So he had 6 total plate appearances, 4 for 4 with 2 walks. That's insane. Freddie Freeman, 2 for 5 with a walk in there. Cubs prospect Owen Casey went 2 for 5. He had a homer today, 3 RBIs on the day. You feel bad for this Great Britain pitching staff that just went through this game today. Absolutely brutal. 5 earned runs, 1 earned run, 4-2, 4-0, 2. So not a great showing for them. I don't really expect Canada to make it super far in this World Baseball Classic, but good on them for pounding Great Britain. I mean, you come into that tournament with those uniforms, you deserve to lose as bad as they did today. That was just a poor showing. Poor showing. So yeah, I mean, it's been fun to watch. I'm trying to tune in, at least keeping up to date on Twitter on some of the games. I know a lot of them are played early in the morning, and some later at night. So I'm trying to keep up to date here and there. But it's so fun watching. You get the All-Star game every year in Major League Baseball, which is kind of our own little version of this, where we get to see all the guys come together and play. But it's cool seeing so many different teams with big name guys on it and prospects on it going out and playing for their home countries. It's neat. I love it. I think it's great for the sport. Pool play should last just into this week, and then we'll get started in the semifinals, which at that point is single elimination. So we'll have 2 rounds of semifinal, or 1 round of semifinal games, then quarterfinal, semifinal, and then the finals will happen towards the end of this month in Miami or Arizona, I believe is the final. I think it's Miami. Let me look here. Yeah, Miami, Florida. So the Pool C, which the United States is in right now, I'm looking at the bracket here. The Pool C is the United States, Mexico, Colombia, Canada, and Great Britain. United States played Great Britain last night. They play Mexico tonight, which should be interesting challenge for them, because I was listening to the game last night and they were talking about how Team Mexico is flooding Arizona right now, and they packed the stadium for Mexico's game yesterday. So the energy is going to be definitely not for Team USA tonight. It'll be interesting to see how they touch on that. But yeah, so Pool C plays out from March 11th through the 15th. And then once they are done, they will go into the quarterfinals, where the winner of Pool C, which hopefully is Team USA, will end up facing the runner-up in Pool D, which is a insanely stacked pool as well. They've got Puerto Rico, Venezuela, who actually beat the DR last night, which was an upset, Dominican Republic, Israel, and Nicaragua. Ideally for Team USA, I don't know about you, Caleb, but I think I would rather face, if it's between Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, if the DR can pull itself back together, I would probably rather face Puerto Rico than I would the DR at this point. I think the DR just has a lot of big names on it, and Puerto Rico is good in its own right. Marcus Stroman, Javi Baez, among the names in Puerto Rico's pool, but I think the Dominican has a lot of more established power guys that scare me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. I think the DR is a much tougher challenge. I would like to see Puerto Rico, outside of just being from a I think, an easier time to compete with. I would like to see Yadier Molina because he's managing that team.
Yeah, it'll be good. Hopefully, we'll have a little more to talk about World Baseball Classic wise. Got anything else on it for today's episode?
Uh, yeah, we could just highlight that game real quick. Schwarber had that big homer. That was really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Not surprised at all. That guy's always hitting nukes, so good for him. Arenado had some really good plays, and he was just running everything out. The Cardinals fan in me was super scared watching him like out that infield single and watching his knee intently. But the baseball fan in me is just like so pumped. That guy just plays the game the right way. I know Wainwright struggled. He got knocked around a little bit, especially by Trace Thompson. But he gave us 4 innings, and he only gave up a run. So I'll take that as far as his first classic game. Hopefully, the next one around, he's a little bit more solid and sturdy because you're not going to be playing Great Britain again.
Right. This is your tune-up.
So hopefully that's all he needs. I don't think it was as much as velocity issues. It was just command, and he was hanging some stuff. So
yeah.
But all in all, they had a pretty good game.
Yeah, I mean, I cringed watching Arenado leg out that base hit. Just the way that I cringe at all those kind of plays. Whenever their knee just snaps into the bag as they're trying to hard stop, it just you don't want to see an injury happen in the World Baseball Classic, and that's a play that can definitely attribute to that. But and then on the Schwarber home run too, I don't know if you caught on the telecast, there was one of the hecklers who was near the microphones for the broadcast was like Schwarbomb or something like that. Time for a Schwarbomb, and then he just nuked one.
No, hit a Schwarbomb.
Nuked it.
I was funny because after the contact was made, you could hear him faintly say, "There it is."
There it is. I was so pissed because I don't know. I was watching on Fox Sports 1 last night. I don't know if my stream was behind, but Jesse Rogers tweeted Schwarbomb before it happened, like 20 seconds before it happened on the screen. I was so mad. I knew one was coming. I mean, we had talked. I thought it was going to happen in his first at bat. He's made for these big moments. He's going to hit a home run like that. I knew one had to happen, and it came at the perfect time. Kyle Schwarber, America's hero. Love it. Love it. All right, well, we're going to do something fun to round out this episode. We are going to do a Cubs Cardinals rotation draft. So the way this is going to work is we have our little pool, which you guys can't see, but we are going to draft a rotation of Cubs and Cardinals pitchers from the years 2000 to 2022, excluding the pandemic season. But the goal here is to build the best rotation possible from Cubs and Cardinals pitchers in this time frame. I think we found some good examples. I think this is going to be interesting to see who goes where in this draft and the way that the rotation is built. But I have a coin here. I have a quarter. I'm going to do a little coin flip. Caleb, I'm going to let you call it in the air what you want. And the way this is going to work, it's going to be a snake draft. So if Caleb goes first, I go second, and then I go third, and then he goes fourth, and then fifth, and then I go sixth, and yada, 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 until we get to 5. So I'm going to flip this. Caleb, call it in the air.
Tails.
And I wish I could show you on the camera, and I promise I will be honest, it is tails. So,
tails
sir,
never fails, baby.
You have the first overall pick in this rotation draft. Who are you selecting for your all Cubs Cardinals 2000s rotation?
Well, Aaron, I don't want to break your heart, man. And it might be the only Cub I take. But I'm going with that 2015 performance out of Jake Arrieta. One of the most elite pitchers from 2015 to, 17?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the most elite pitching we've ever seen in a 3-year span. So, he had 8.3 WAR that season. He threw 229 innings pitched, had that ERA well under 2 at 177. Only gave up 48 walks and 236 strikeouts. I mean, that is elite as it comes, man.
If he didn't win Cy Young that year, I don't know what would have happened, but that was the most dominant run of pitching I think I have ever witnessed as a baseball fan, and it was so incredible to watch coming from our side. I mean, not only did he have that 177 ERA, he led the league in games started that year with 33. He had 4 complete games, 3 shutouts, and I think that was the year he had 2 no-hitters. There was definitely 1 no-hitter that year.
Yes. I think he had 1 in 15 and 1 in 16.
Yeah, one was against the Reds, one was against the Dodgers. He led the league in hits per 9 innings at 5.9, and he led the league in home runs per 9 at 0.4. Just a thoroughly dominant season, start to finish. I mean, throwing 229 innings and only allowing 45 earned runs the whole year. Incredible stuff. Incredible stuff.
Insane.
Great career.
Something else I'm considering too is postseason performance. So his
Yes.
performance in that wild card game to push the Cubs to the NLDS against the Cardinals, remarkable. To shut down. I feel bad for him, but what a 98 win Pirates team.
Yeah.
It's just the format. I mean, it's no longer the format. We won't ever see that again. But
Well, the tweet that will live in infamy is when Pirates fans were heckling him on Twitter, and he tweeted before the game, "You can hope, but no matter what you do, it doesn't matter." And he showed it. 4-0 shutout.
he is him.
He is him. Love Jake. Love me some Jake Arrieta. All right, well, I got 2 picks in a row here. So, looking over this list here of guys that I think I would want to put on this list, I'm going to go, just so the Cubs fans don't yell at me here, with my first round selection. I am going to be picking 2003 Mark Pryor. I mean, this dude balled out. 211 innings pitched, a 2.43 ERA, and 245 strikeouts, only 50 walks. Mark Pryor is one of those guys that you wish had a longer career. He was a budding superstar in the making. It's a shame his career was as short as he was. But I mean, he just a phenomenal year that year. His WHIP was 1.1. He was an All-Star, finished third in Cy Young and ninth in MVP voting. Made 30 starts, 3 complete games that year, 1 shutout. Just a dominant performance, top to bottom. I don't think you could ask more from a guy like Mark Pryor. And he's one of those figures in Chicago sports history where if you could prevent one guy from having injuries, what would it be? I mean, baseball-wise, he's in that conversation.
Absolutely.
So Mark Pryor will be my first round selection in this draft. Second overall, or my second round pick, I guess I should say. I've been going back and forth between 2 different guys here. And I think I have settled on one. And my second round pick is going to be 2013 Adam Wainwright. Just a purely dominant pitching performance, top to bottom. Another 200 plus inning guy, 241, which is a number you do not see super often from a guy, anybody in the league these days. But Adam Wainwright has been that dude for a long time. I mean, he still looked sharp last night, even though he was getting knocked around, but he has been that dude. His 2013 season was definitely a memorable one. He had 34 games started, 5 complete games. In that rotation. So I've already got a couple guys who can give you full complete games. 2 shutouts that year. He had a 1.068 WHIP. He finished second in the Cy Young and top 20 in the MVP voting. The strikeout numbers too for a guy who, hasn't always had super large strikeout numbers besides that 3-year stretch or 4-year stretch from 2009 to 2013. 219 strikeouts for him is incredible. Only 15 home runs allowed too, which is something similar to we saw with Jake Arrieta, only allowing those 10. I think giving me a 1-2 punch of Pryor and Wainwright up there is a formidable rotation, and I am curious who's going to be your next selection.
Well, just a note on Wainwright there, and I wanted to look it up because I knew in 2010.
Okay.
So, tough break for that guy because he finished second to Kershaw in 2013, and then second to I think Tim Lincecum in 2010. The Freak.
I just realized that Wainwright's never won a Cy Young award.
Nope. He's got two second place finishes and 1 third place finish.
Interesting.
Brutal, but I mean the guy's always been there, so you can't be hurt too much by it. I do have to go with a pretty strong performance here, and my father would be proud of me as it's one of his favorite players. But my second pick is going to be 2005 Chris Carpenter.
Yep.
Dog. And that's his Cy Young year with the Cardinals. Chris Carpenter is one of those guys where his career should have been a lot longer than it actually was.
Yep.
Especially when you look at modern technology and things that we can do to prolong pitchers' careers. Chris Carpenter could have really benefited from that. He had 241 innings pitched that year with a 2.83 ERA, only 51 walks, and over 200 strikeouts. Like I said, he got first in Cy Young, and he was eighth place in MVP voting.
That's always
So
cool when you see pitchers finish top 10 in MVP. I like that.
absolutely, it's not very common. I think the most recent case you could make was Sandy Alcantara for
Mm-hmm.
a top MVP place there.
And Shohei. You could argue Shohei either way, too.
Yes, absolutely. But Chris Carpenter, I'm a big fan. I love the guy. I loved his fire and passion that he played with. I'm struggling here, and this might surprise you.
Tell me why.
But my third pick going to be 2016 John Lester. Probably the only reason that team won the World Series. I'm going to say it.
I'm not happy with you.
That guy came into that Game 7 on super short rest and won them that game.
You know what?
Kept him in it.
You know what makes me really mad, Caleb? I'm going to tell you. Every time I go to John Lester's beautiful baseball reference page, he's staring at me in a Cardinals cap. It's so I hate it. It's so annoying. It just you're there for not even 12 games. Get out of here. It's bad enough you had to go there. I still remember that trade deadline and seeing that notification on my phone that he was dealt to the Cardinals. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Why'd you got to do him
Lester,
like
that? From a Cardinals fan perspective, the thing about both Lester and Kyle Hendricks was anytime from 2016 to when did they cut bait with Lester? 18, 19?
It was 2020 after the pandemic year.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna say anytime from 2016 to 2018, you just knew you weren't hitting those guys.
Mm-hmm.
You were not hitting those guys whatsoever. So you go in thinking just try to get to the sixth or seventh inning, only down a couple runs, and try to get to their bullpen because you weren't getting anything off those two starters.
Yeah.
So I can admire that. That's why I went with Lester for my third pick there. But it was tough. I was definitely between him and one of the Cardinals I wanted to pick. So Aaron, I would love to know your next two.
Well, just like you, Caleb, I'm a little torn here. I do have 2 picks in a row, though, so I can be a little flexible. You did steal the one lefty I wanted in this entire draft. So that kind of limits. I feel like I have to have a lefty in here. And the 2 other options that I have are not very appealing, in my opinion. Not at all. So I may go a 5-man right-handed rotation. It's happened. It can be effective. It'll be fine.
I love it.
For my next pick, though, I want somebody who can utterly dominate a lineup top to bottom. And this guy definitely did that. He is not the highest ranked in terms of WAR on our list that we have here. But for my third round pick, I am going to select Kerry Wood and his 2003 season, 266 strikeouts. That is what I want in my rotation. 32 starts, 4 complete games. If you can see a trend where I'm going here, I'm getting a bunch of guys who can just not even make me need to use my bullpen. 32 games started, 4 complete games, 2 shutouts, 266 strikeouts, over 211 innings pitched. He did walk 100 batters. He did give up 24 home runs, but I mean, besides that, he did lead the league in hits to 9 ratio, and he did lead the lead by probably a good margin in strikeouts to 9 ratio with 11.3. Interestingly enough, I mean, that's a pretty dominant year. He was an all-star that year. He did not place in Cy Young voting that year. I'm going to try to look up now because I'm very curious.
Strikeout year, right?
Yeah, 2003 MLB NL Cy Young. Because I want to know now why he was not in here, and there's probably a really good reason because somebody probably dominated. He was not. It looks like there were only 4 people who got votes in here. Eric Ganji won that year, a reliever.
Okay. Yeah.
Won the Cy Young that year. Very impressive. 137 strikeouts as a reliever. That's not bad at all.
I think he's the last one to have won it as a reliever.
Zach Britton was close that one year when he posted a sub-1 ERA. He was the other guy. So yeah, I'll take Kerry Wood, big name strikeout guy. I got to have somebody in there that can just carve him up. I love the complete game metric. It's really nice to see. And I think this next one is a little tricky. I know I need to be concise here with who I pick. Part of me wants to go for another big strikeout name. And I think I will go for another big strikeout name here. And with my fourth round selection, I am going to be taking the 2019 season of Jack Flaherty. It's probably controversial, Cubs fans, you can probably argue with me for this one, but I mean, if you just look at the numbers that Flaherty put up, and Flaherty's not like this career ace type starting pitcher. This was his one good year, but his one good year that he did put up in 2019 was notable, especially for the pool of players that we were looking at. He did not have any complete games, so that breaks my streak there. But he did start 33 games, which is impressive for him considering his injury history that followed that 2019 year. He went 11-8. I don't really factor wins in too much into my decision. He had a 2.75 ERA, 231 strikeouts in 196 and a third innings. Did give up 25 long balls, but led the league in WHIP at 0.968 and led the league in hits per nine at 6.2. Top 4 Cy Young, top 15 MVP voting. He finished 13th and 4 respectively there, coming off of a top 5 Rookie of the Year finish. I like the strikeout numbers. I like his youth, only 23 that year. I think that's a good sign moving forward for that rotation. Yeah, it's controversial. I don't know if that's one of your guys who was coming up on your list or not, but I like the big strikeout numbers, and I like the innings pitched as well. I think it's a good mix of both. So Jack Flaherty, slotting you in at number 4 in my rotation.
Yeah, it was definitely my next pick, but that's all right. So I'm going to go with another guy who, unfortunately is no longer in the league doing anything productive, but Carlos Martinez, his 2016 season is just so impressive. That was kind of a time when Adam Wainwright was starting to trend down. I know he picked it back up and came back into... Came in 16, 17, 18, and he was lights out for us. This is the highest ERA I have on my staff, but the guy was just so electric. You just need his energy in the rotation, and that's why I have him for my 4th spot. He's just shy of 200 innings for that season. He's got over a 3 ERA, 3.04, but he only had 70 walks, which, at the end of his career, he had... with the Cardinals, at least, he was a bit more wild than that. So partner that with his 174 strikeouts, and he got a pretty good season from C-Mart, as the fans dubbed him. All right,
Carlos Martinez. What a man.
I'm torn between two. I'm going to make a move here.
Don't do it.
And with my 5th one, don't worry. I'm going to draft John Lackey.
Okay. He was on my list.
2015.
He was
in his 2015 season. Lackey came over in 14. Yes, 14, because he was with that 13 Red Sox squad that the Cardinals lost to in the World Series. They traded Alan Craig for him, so he came over in the Alan Craig deal. He was there for 14. In 15, he was really important to the staff because Wainwright went down pretty early in the year with Achilles injury, and he was out the whole seaon. So Lackey
didn't he trip over a bat? Wasn't that the Achilles injury? Was that him? He tripped over a bat running.
Yep. His bat, went down in the line, in the baseline, and he rolled over it weird, and he tore his Achilles. He was out. Actually, because of I think his struggles in 16 and 17 were related to never fully recovering from that injury.
Interesting.
Yep. So Lackey pitched a lot that year. He had well over 200 innings. Pitched pretty low ERA at a 2.77. Only 53 walks and 175 strikeouts for that season. And like I said, the Cardinals that season won 100 games.
Yeah.
That was a season when Molina went down, Wainwright went down. You still were, searching for your first baseman a few years after Pujols had left. I was impressed with that squad, that they were able to win that many games with a very hungry Cubs team and a pretty solid Pirates team right behind them.
Yeah.
So that is my rotation.
It's not a bad one.
I would have liked to add another lefty in place of either C-Mart or Lackey, but I'm going to go ahead and stick with the 4 righties, 1 lefty.
Well, you know what, Caleb? At least you have a lefty in there because I didn't really see another lefty on this board that was worth taking, in my opinion. So I, in my final pick, am going to go with somebody who, even though we have a designated hitter rule universally in Major League Baseball at this point, Big Z Carlos Zambrano in his 2004 season, he is a dog, and you were to be on his good side at all times. Otherwise, he would come after you hard. That 2004 season, 31 games started at 2.75 ERA, 209 innings, didn't surpass 200 strikeouts. He had 188, 81 walks, only allowed 14 home runs that year. Had a whip of about 1.2, finished the year as an all-star, top 5 in Cy Young, and actually ended up top 30 in MVP, finishing at number 28. Zambrano was one of those dudes who not only could he pitch, but he could hit when he had to in the lineup at the 9 hole, so he wasn't an easy out as most pitchers were at that point. Not that that plays into a role into what today's type of rotation would be, but I need somebody in there who's got that kind of tenacity that Zambrano has. There's nobody in my rotation who, I could consider Flaherty if he gets fired up enough, but Zambrano would be the heart of that staff in terms of motivating those guys. Top to bottom, I think we both have really good starting rotations. I think if we add up the WAR here, which I can do real quick while we talk about this to kind of see, judging by that, who ended up with the better rotation. Both of these staffs are good. I think we have a nice mix of both of the Cubs and Cardinals players in there. Like you said, I would have liked to had a lefty in my rotation, but it is what it is. So I ended up with 32.2 wins above replacement total in mine. Very nice number for your starting rotation. Could you imagine if a starting rotation in baseball put up this kind of WAR total in today's game? It's absurd, honestly.
Yeah, it'd be nuts, man.
So I'm calculating yours here, and you ended up
Close.
31.1. I thought you had me there for a minute. I thought you had me.
I don't think so. I was looking at a lot of 5s.
Yeah,
I saw a lot of 6s.
That Jake one's a little top heavy, but I mean, just Jake up there alone is going to give you an advantage.
And, you could get a higher WAR. Like I said, I was basing mine. One of the biggest factors was as an outsider fan on those Cubs picks, and then also, just looking at dominant performances in the postseason, in addition to just attitudes and personalities of the players themselves.
Yeah. Well, that was our fun little rotation draft to end this episode. I think next episode we're going to do another type of draft like this, whether it's a bullpen draft, a starting lineup draft, or a something along those lines. We're going to try to keep it interesting here. We'll definitely have more content as the season goes along, and we can maybe do some more modernized drafts or type of competitions like these. To everybody who's watching, thank you again. I know this episode ran a little bit longer than our normal ones, but we do appreciate you if you've made it all the way to the end here to continue with the support that you've given us. It's truly incredible to watch. We love watching all the comments, all the likes, everything on our social medias when we share the post. Everything you guys do and say to us means the world. We hope to keep doing this. Let's hope for a, knock on wood, relatively injury-free week of spring training for all teams. Let's see Team USA dominate here in the World Baseball Classic. Caleb, you got anything else to go on here as we round this one out?
Go Cardinals.
Go Cardinals, go Cubs, and we will see you for episode 4. Thanks, everybody. Peace.
Yes. Thank you.